The crisp autumn air bit at my cheeks as I knelt among the roses, my hands working the soil with a practiced ease. The garden was my sanctuary, a place where life's complexities seemed to untangle themselves amidst the vibrant blooms. But today, as I reached for another rose, my phone buzzed with an urgency that felt out of place in this tranquil setting. It was an unfamiliar number, and something in the air, perhaps the sharpness of the day, compelled me to answer. The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, yet carried an undercurrent of something unsettling. "Mrs. Ellen, we need you to come to the office this afternoon. It's important," Mr. Thompson, my husband's boss, said, his words trailing off into a silence that spoke volumes. My heart raced as I dressed in my best attire, the drive to Tech Trend Innovations a blur of confusion and dread. What could be so pressing that they needed me there? And why did I feel like the very foundation of my life was about to shift under my feet? The autumn leaves crunched underfoot as I knelt in the garden, the scent of damp earth and roses filling the air. My hands, weathered from years of gardening, moved with a rhythm born of habit, snipping away the dead blooms to encourage new growth. Life in Maplewood had become a series of these small, comforting rituals. Richard, my husband, had left for work earlier, his briefcase in hand, his mind likely already on the day's meetings at Tech Trend Innovations. We had built a life here, one where predictability was a luxury, where the biggest excitement was deciding which wine to pair with our Sunday brunch. As I reached for another rose, my phone buzzed against my thigh. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something, perhaps the unusual timing or the crispness of the day, urged me to answer. "Hello?" I said, brushing dirt from my gloves. "Mrs. Ellen?" The voice was smooth, professional, yet there was an undercurrent of urgency. "This is Mr. Thompson, Richard's boss, and I have Lisa here with me." My heart skipped. Mr. Thompson had never called me directly. Richard always handled his work affairs, keeping the corporate world at a distance from our home. "We need you to come to the office this afternoon, Mrs. Ellen. It's important," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice trailing off into a silence that spoke volumes. I glanced at the roses, their vibrant colors now seeming to mock the sudden intrusion of the outside world into our serene bubble. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I'll be there," I replied, my voice steady, despite the eye dressed in my best attire, a blend of elegance and professionalism, and drove to the sleek, glass-fronted building of Tech Trend Innovations. The drive was a blur, my mind racing with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Upon arrival, I was greeted by a receptionist whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She escorted me to a plush conference room where Mr. Thompson, a stern-looking man in his late 50s, and Lisa, a sharp young woman with an air of authority, awaited me. The meeting started with the usual pleasantries, but the air was thick with tension. Mr. Thompson's voice was calm, almost too calm, as he began discussing Richard's performance. He spoke of Richard's recent work as subpar, his decisions as lacking foresight, and his overall capability as questionable. Each word felt like a blow, my heart racing as I listened to the critique of my husband's professional life. I felt a mix of shock and defensiveness. Richard had always been so dedicated, so meticulous. How could this be? Mr. Thompson's eyes were cold, calculating, as if he was dissecting not just Richard's work, but our very life together. Lisa chimed in, her voice sharp. "We've noticed a significant drop in productivity, Mrs. Allen. Richard's focus seems elsewhere." I wanted to defend him, to say that Richard was the backbone of this company, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I managed, "I understand your concerns, but Richard has always been committed to his work." Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "It's not just about commitment, Mrs. Ellen. It's about results, and frankly," as the conversation deepened, Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial tone. He proposed an unthinkable solution to secure Richard's position within the company. They suggested that if I were to spend the night with both him and Lisa, they would ensure Richard's job was safe. The room fell silent. the weight of the proposal hanging heavily in the air. My mind raced with confusion, anger, and a desperate desire to protect my husband's career. After a moment that felt like an eternity, I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. For Richard. That evening, under the guise of a business dinner, I found myself in a luxurious hotel suite, the reality of my decision sinking in. The night was a blur of emotions, guilt, and a strange sense of duty. I remember the plush carpet under my feet, the soft music playing in the background, and the scent of expensive perfume mingling with the crisp air of the suite. Mr. Thompson and Lisa were there, their demeanor shifting from professional to something more intimate, more personal. The conversation was light, almost as if we were old friends catching up, but beneath it all, there was an unspoken agreement, a transaction that felt like it was stripping away layers of my dignity. The evening unfolded with a mix of forced laughter and awkward silences. Mr. Thompson poured wine, his hands steady, his eyes occasionally meeting mine with a look that suggested he was in control. Lisa, on the other hand, seemed to oscillate between being part of the deal and showing a flicker of empathy, perhaps understanding the gravity of what was being asked. As the night progressed, the implications of my choice became starkly clear. I was there not just for Richard's job, but to navigate through a maze of moral ambiguity. The suite, with its opulent decor, felt like a gilded cage, each moment stretching into an eternity of internal conflict. The details of what transpired are veiled in a haze of discretion, but the essence was clear. I was there to ensure Richard's future, to safeguard our life together, even if it meant compromising my own integrity. The morning light brought no relief, only the stark realization of what had occurred. As the next morning, I was driven back home by Lisa, who remained silent, her expression unreadable. The car ride was a silent film, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional turn signal. I felt hollow, my actions replaying in my mind like a film I couldn't stop. Every turn of the wheel, every stoplight, seemed to echo the choices I had made. Once home, I showered, trying to wash away the night, but the guilt remained, a stubborn stain on my soul. Later that day, Richard came home. His face was weary but hopeful, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. He sat me down on our familiar couch, his eyes searching mine for answers, for understanding. "I heard from Mr. Thompson today," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "He said you did something incredible for me." My heart pounded in my chest. The room seemed to close in around us. What exactly had Mr. Thompson told him? How much did Richard know? The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. "He said you convinced him to give me another chance," Richard continued, his voice breaking slightly. "He said you were persuasive, that you made a significant impact." The words hung in the air, a mix of gratitude and confusion in Richard's eyes. I could see the relief, the hope, but beneath it, there was a shadow of doubt, a flicker of something he couldn't quite grasp. I swallowed hard, the truth a bitter pill I couldn't bring myself to offer. "I did what I had to do for us, Richard," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper, "for our future." Richard's hand reached out, taking mine, his touch warm and reassuring. "I don't know what you said or did, but thank you, Ellen. I owe you everything." The sincerity in his voice, the love in his eyes, it was almost too much. The weight of my secret, the night's events, it all threatened to spill over. But I held it in, the truth locked away behind a facade of smiles and nods. "I just want us to be okay. I just want us to be okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper, my eyes avoiding his. The guilt was a heavy cloak around my shoulders, each word from Richard like a gentle reminder of the life I was trying to preserve, even at the cost of my own soul. Richard's expression softened, his eyes filled with a gratitude that cut deeper than any knife. "I know, Ellen, and we will be. Thanks to you, I've got another chance to prove myself at work." Mr. Thompson called me into his office today. I felt my heart sink further. Here it was, the moment I had been dreading. What did he say? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He praised your loyalty and dedication to my career, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. He told me that your actions had not only secured my position, but also opened up opportunities for advancement. I was overwhelmed with gratitude, believing you had somehow managed to impress or influence my superiors. The words hit me like a wave, a mix of relief and despair washing over me. My silence spoke volumes, my nod barely perceptible. I felt torn between the relief that Richard's job was safe and the guilt of my infidelity. My actions were justified in one sense, but morally bankrupt in another. Richard continued, his voice filled with a hope that I felt I had no right to share. I don't know what you said or did, but thank you, Ellen. I owe you everything. I couldn't meet his gaze, the weight of my secret too heavy. I did what I had to do for us, I managed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Richard's hand squeezed mine, a gesture of love and trust that felt like a betrayal. I just want us to be okay. He echoed my earlier sentiment, his voice carrying a note of finality, of acceptance. As the evening light faded, casting long shadows across our living room, I sat there, the truth locked away behind a facade of smiles and nods. The question lingered in the air, unspoken but palpable. Would I ever reveal the truth to Richard? The answer was as elusive as the shadows life returned to its semblance of normalcy, but the undercurrents of that night lingered like a persistent fog. Ellen continued her daily routines, her garden now a sanctuary where she could lose herself in the simplicity of nurturing life. Each bloom seemed to whisper secrets, each snip of the shears a silent acknowledgement of the choices made. Richard, buoyed by his unexpected career boost, was more affectionate than ever. His gratitude was palpable, often thanking Ellen for her sacrifice. He didn't know the full extent of what she had done, but his love and appreciation were genuine, making the weight of her secret all the heavier. One evening, as they sat in their garden, the twilight casting a soft glow over the roses, Richard took her hand. His eyes, filled with love and gratitude, met hers. I don't know what you did, but thank you, Ellen. You've given me a new lease on my career, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ellen smiled, a sad, knowing smile, and squeezed his hand. I did what I had to do for us, she whispered, the truth locked away, perhaps forever, in the quiet corners of her heart. The garden was their haven, but now it was also a place where Ellen's conscience wrestled with her actions. Every rose, every petal, seemed to reflect the complexity of her emotions. She had safeguarded their future, but at what cost? As the days turned into weeks, Ellen found herself reflecting more often on that night. The plush carpet under her feet, the soft music, the scent of expensive perfume, all were etched in her memory. Mr. Thompson's steady hands pouring wine, his eyes occasionally meeting hers with a look of control, and Lisa's oscillating demeanor between empathy and complicity. The implications of her choice were starkly clear now. She had navigated through a maze of moral ambiguity, her integrity compromised for the sake of their life together. The suite, with its opulent decor, had felt like a gilded cage, each moment stretching into an eternity of internal conflict. The question lingered, unspoken but palpable. What would happen if the truth ever came to light? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.